I've done this video like 15 times already, so I'm just gonna go for it and like hope for the best. Do you have this icon on your desktop? Do you play Black Desert because you have no life? Do you hate reading? Do you not know how to read? Well, in this video, I'll be helping all of you guys. I'm a video player, so I know what reading does to us. I'll be sacrificing myself for you. I know it's like a dark, grim ritual. Hopefully you guys will learn a few things in this video. We'll be going over crystals, all the stats you can get from crystals, what they do when crystals become relevant, what crystals to look at the end, and basically we'll be going to be explaining all of the stats for the crystals. That way you can actually pick and choose the crystal setup you want, and you're not actually afraid to swap crystals after you understand all of the stats. Hello everybody and welcome to my crystals guide. This is ABPlays, and today, as I said before, we're going to be discussing crystals. What are crystals? Why they are useful? When do they become relevant? What are the stats you can get from crystals? Early game player needs, mid game player needs, even setup suggestions at the end. So let's start with what crystals are. Long story short, every BDO character has 19 crystal slots, 13 of which are normal crystal slots and 6 of which are Karazad crystal slots. So for today we're going to be looking at the 13 normal crystal slots, and even then there are only 12 if you don't count the pay to win crystal. Basically there is a crystal slot you can unlock using the claw, the black spirit claw, but to actually get a crystal that you can use in that slot you actually have to pay for a coupon to like a tailoring coupon, I believe, and then smelt the fucking outfit. It's like a weird ritual thing. Again, I'm not going to be doing that. So yeah, that's regarding slots. Crystals themselves, in my opinion, they're semi-permanent stats you add to your character by equipping the crystals in the slots, and each crystal has a unique combination of stats to allow you for more creativity in your setup and make sure every single crystal you use is suited to your playstyle. I would consider crystals to have 5 main types, excluding life, because like life crystals you can only use either mastery or EXP. Let's actually start by discussing the 5 main types for the crystal stats you can get, which are damage. You also have your resistances like DR and evasion and CC resistances. You also have your HP, your BSR, and finally quality of life stats. So we're going to be going over each type, what they do, what it means, every subcategory and under that type, etc, explaining everything basically. So crystal stats, their relevancy and priorities in my opinion regarding playstyle. First things first, let me get the easy things out of the way. EXP is mostly for early game to get to level 61/62 earlier / easier. After that it's kind of redundant, you don't gain much from leveling up anyways. Next is HP, which is mostly used in uncapped PvP, and if your class is too squishy in PvE, you can use HP. In my opinion it's kind of redundant because most of the time you cannot grind at a grind spot if you don't have the DP requirements, because they'll just one-shot you anyways. So HP seems kind of redundant in my opinion, at least in PvE. BSR you always want to have in your setup in almost all content, because you can either ultimate or use the Z buff to gain insane stats, so the more the better obviously. Regarding BSR, there are 2 types of BSR stats you can get, either increasing your BSR maximum, which allows you to go over the 100% cap for the BSR you can collect, or increasing the rate of which you gain BSR. In my opinion, BSR is almost always a nice to have if you have free crystal slots or you're overcapped. Quality of life is basically filler, or when you are okay with your clearing speeds, you don't want to go faster, basically you've reached the clearing limit for your class. This is when I will go for movement speed. Just keep in mind that quality of life stats will get you faster clear speeds, but it's not as directly involved, basically is what I'm trying to say. You can minimize the time between packs basically through movement speed. You can minimize the time to kill packs through casting speed, maybe if you have a lot of skills and you're only rotating like 5 out of the 8 skills you can rotate, I would use casting speed then. That way you can like min-max the cooldowns a bit better. I just spilled my fucking Nescafe all over myself. Anyways, a very important note, as I just mentioned, almost all stats contribute to better clear speeds. They all go hand in hand. There isn't really a useless stat in the game except for maybe HP and EXP in my opinion. Now into the meaty parts. Basically we're going to be discussing all of the subcategories under the damage type of stats. And firstly we're going to be discussing AP. AP is like, this is going to be a mouthful honestly, so bear with me. The actual number that matters is your total AP, which you can access through the gear wheel. Under the gear wheel itself, there should be like a settings icon and like a sword and a shield right next to it. Maybe I can like show the icon in the edit. If you click that, make it brown, that means it's active. You'll be seeing your total AP at the top left, for example, or like in the gear wheel. The total AP is the number that like you always check to check if you're able to grind at certain spots or not, if you meet the requirements for certain spots or not. How do you increase your total AP? Basically any type of AP increases your total AP. That includes sheet AP or gear AP, gear score. What are the types of AP that go into total AP? In my opinion, there are 3 types. You have gear score AP or sheet AP. This is the AP you gain from journals or your actual gear. You also have your hidden AP, which is basically the AP. It used to be hidden, it's not hidden anymore because you can actually see your total. Anyways, hidden AP can be gained through the brackets from the sheet AP, which I'll be discussing more a little bit later. You can also increase your hidden AP through crystals, also buffs like simple chrome meal, any potions, any drafts. These all increase your total AP, which is basically like your buffs. So regarding sheet score AP, like I mentioned, you can only get that through journals, which you can get 10 total AP through journals. And you have your gear score AP, which like is the AP you gain through gear. This AP or like sheet AP is what contributes into brackets. You can always check the AP brackets and DP and like any types of brackets honestly on garmoth.com through the brackets tool. So these are all of the AP types. Obviously regarding crystals, you'll always want to have AP in your crystal setup because it's basically the final push towards your total AP. Someone told me that species damage is removed from the game. I'm not quite sure, don't quote me on that, but like keep that in mind in case they add it back or something, I don't know. Most people just use as much AP in their crystal slots and forget about it, which is recommended until you're like mid to late game. Especially mid game, you're going to start to like notice the 5% caps more because you'll be staying at certain grind spots for more because of how the game works in mid game right now. Basically you're going to be at Hex Sanctuary, you're going to farm for like 100 billion silver, and then you're going to go to Tongrad Ruins basically. Once you're at Tongrad Ruins, you're going to farm again like 100 billion silver again, if not more. Get to like 1800 and then go to Orzekia or whatever, for example. So in mid game you'll be noticing the 5% AP caps more, so keep that in mind. You always want to be min-maxing your potential at grind spots, especially if you plan on staying there for a decent amount of time. That's like basically how the game works. Once you get to late game, the AP threshold becomes more important to it, and more important to not overstack AP above the 5% cutoff. Keep the cutoffs in mind, make sure you're min-maxing your setup AP wise effectively. So what do you do if you're at Hex Sanctuary? This is Crystal's part, I don't know anymore, this is me trying to be funny I guess. So what do you do if you're at Hex, for example, Hex Sanctuary, and you're already at the 5% cutoff? This is when other damage boosting stats come into play, like crit rate for example, and critical damage, back attack damage, etc. Any special attack damage buffs like back attack and air attack increases are mostly playstyle related. Everyone almost stacks back attack because every single class can proc it. Some classes are using back attack more effectively because they're dashing around a lot more, like Awakening Lamb for example, which is my main. I dash around a lot. I have a very My class is very quick. The abilities themselves don't linger around too much. So I abuse back attack. Special attack increases all of the percentile damage buffs, the ones we've mentioned earlier, like air attacks, down attacks, back attacks, etc. Extra AP against monsters counts as total AP, so it's only useful under the AP 5% cap. BSR again is always a nice to have. We've discussed BSR earlier. This is like the prime time to use BSR crystals when you're over the 5% AP caps. Also casting speed and movement speed. Movement speed is more quality of life, casting speed is more for actual DPS. Finally, regarding crits, this is something I have to mention. Not all classes want crit rate, because some classes actually have a ton of like skills that have 100% crit rate. And if you just rotate those, you will not need any crit rate buffs. But almost all classes want crit damage, because almost all classes do crit at some point. So you always want to have crit damage in your crystal setup. And depending on your class and the rotation you use, you should always check the skills you use mainly for their crit rates and such, and buff your crit rate accordingly if needed. Crystals part finale. Any other stats are not mandatory per se, more so quality of life and for ease of use, like more tankiness in my opinion, and CC resistances. Maybe some, if you don't have the infinite HP, some HP per hit is useful, I guess. I did use them early game, keep that in mind. Just to like hammer home that concept, quality of life for me is like not mandatory, which means that most people will have varying opinions on whether to use it or not. HP differs per player and class. Awakening Lamp, for example, is pretty squishy. Even then, I don't really face issues where I think that like I wish I had more HP, or like if only I had more HP I would have like lived or whatever. Most of the time if I die, I'm being one-shotted through super armor at like bosses, for example, and like, or maybe I run out of stamina and like I forget, and I just try to dash around, and like I have the evasion rule like locked, and I just die. But that's like human error. I wouldn't say it's like a requirement, basically. DR and evasion, generally speaking, is again class related, but if you're doing PvE only, I would say just use DR. Evasion is like redundant in PvE. It feels useless. It is very OP in PvP, only in uncapped scenarios, and if your class has like evasion passives, you can stack a shit ton of evasion and like end up being tanky because you're not being hit. Again, feel free to use whichever. This is like playstyle related, I guess, more so class related and more so content related in my opinion, but again, feel free to do whatever. Okay, so now that we've discussed all of the stats, all of the relevant stats in my opinion, you can get through crystals, except for the accuracy, which I'm not going to be discussing because again it feels useless in my opinion. Okay, now that we've discussed all of the relevant stats you can get through crystals and what they do, we're going to be discussing certain suggestions regarding the stats themselves, and then we're going to be suggesting a few crystals, actual crystals to look at, and whether like, okay, this is like best in slot, or like this is a great value option. All of those will be discussed in the second part of the suggestions. It's a very hard fucking word to say. So regarding suggestions, you almost always want EXP crystals in your setup for early game to help you get to level 61/62 faster. After you're there, and even then you don't have to fill every slot with EXP. You will also get free +5 AP crystal slots, crystals a lot. Be sure to use them when you can. Basically, they're like free, what was it called? Like ancient crimson, I don't fucking know, yellow grade crystals that give you like one stat, basically. So transitioning from early to mid game, you're going to be having less and less EXP crystals. You're going to be having more and more AP crystals. You also want to have a few like critical damage crystals, like the corrupteds, for example. There are some high value crystals like the rebellious crystals, which give you decent stats like EXP and AP and HP as well. These are like best in slot for mid game in my opinion. So yeah, keep that in mind. You're basically from early game to mid game, you're transitioning from EXP to more AP and more damage basically. Once you're at mid game, you're looking at the total AP, your total AP and like the AP caps constantly. Even if you're like at hex already and like you're making gear upgrades, okay, I just gained like 10 more total AP through the gear progression and the bracket that I just hit, for example. Okay, I'm taking out like 10 more AP from my crystals and slotting in more like movement speed, for example, or more casting speed if you can, more critical damage, more back attack, etc, etc, etc. That's mostly what you're doing at mid game. Once you're at mid game, don't like worry too much, as long as you're grinding somewhat efficiently. And what I mean by somewhat is like basically between 70% and like 99% efficiency is like, okay, I'm chilling here, this is fine. I'm not really griefing myself per se. I can min max if you want, but I'm not griefing. So again, mid game, don't focus too much on crystals. Yeah, they do help a lot. They are like a night and day difference between grinding, but I wouldn't worry too much about spending the big bucks basically on the actual good crystals like the brutals of decimation, etc, etc. Brutals you can, because they're somewhat cheap. They're like 2 billion for both crystals, 1 billion each. It's a decent upgrade, but like that 2 billion can do a lot more if you use it in your gear, basically, if you upgrade your gear more. Once you're like deep into mid game, this is when gear progression starts to like not slow down per se, but be less noticeable in your gameplay. Even if you upgrade like 1 or 2 accessories, most of the time this will not be like a big enough of an upgrade to like move you on to the next decent grind spot, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And that's when you actually want to like, okay, hold on, I'm not going to be spending 2 billion per click on my fucking Karazad ring to get it to hex, for example, or like sept or whatever. I'm actually going to be spending that on my crystal setup. That way I can gain more permanent stats and I can actually get the 2 billion back faster. And slowly you're going to be like, your crystal setup, you're going to slowly but surely get to the best in slot crystals, which are basically the most expensive crystals in the game. The cheapest crystal you can get is like 1 billion each, either the brutals or the ultimate macalods, the blue ones. They're like also 1 billion each, which you're going to get 4 of. Yeah, slowly but surely. Again, don't stress about it too much. If you can, you should. If you can't, don't worry about it. If you see a better upgrade you want to go for, just go for it, that's fine. And again, once you're at like hex, this is like the beginning of actual mid game. This is when I would start to like min max my crystal setup basically. Mid to late game is a little different. You'll always want to have a crystal page preset that pushes your total AP through the roof, basically, as much total AP as you can. That way, when you're like, okay, I'm going to grind at like, I don't fucking know, like at Star's End, for example, which is like the very end game. I can barely meet the requirements, but I wanna do like an hour there. Not for silver, but mostly for the raw drops it can provide. Okay, I need a preset for that. If I'm at like Orzekia, for example, and I'm like way over the AP caps, I'm not going to go like all into AP because it's redundant again. I would just have a second preset for my actual like grinding spot for silver. That's like min-maxed for like clearing speed. PS, very important note, I'm a mid-game player as of right now. I don't know best in slot for late game or any of that, but I can like deduce what the best in slot crystals are, basically. Regarding the crystals themselves, early game just slot in any XP crystal you get, any 5 AP crystal you get. We're going to be talking a lot more about mid-game, but one crystal you should always have, or like a few crystals to mention you should always have in your as soon as possible, basically, is Giffensteer, the yellow one. It gives drop rate, it gives a shit ton of other stats that are important, but like drop rate is the most important one in my opinion. 10% for free, basically. It's like 130 million or something like that. Also, again, your rebellious crystals, they're very good best in slot crystals for mid to late game even. Maybe not late game, but it's like best in slot until you reach late game basically. They give you a lot of good stats, even EXP, and they're very cheap to get. Also your corrupteds, you want your corrupteds because they're best in slot for any crit type of setup, which give like 10% crit damage and even 2 more percent once you slot in the 2 crystals, which is basically a 2-set effect. Also there are like 10% critical damage for cheap. I don't remember the name for them, but they're also like yellow grade. These crystals only give like 10% crit damage, but they're decent for early game. If you have them, use them. Don't worry about it too much. Mid game, however, your choices in regards to best in slot are slowly getting like less and less because you're min maxing more and more. You're actually starting to understand what you need from your crystals. So for mid game, you'll have your corrupteds anyways, you'll have your rebellious anyways, you'll have your Steer anyways. Those like 5 crystals are in every PvE setup basically. You also want your 2 brutal crystals of decimation. They're like a billion each, very good. They give you like 7 monster AP and like other good stats as well, like casting speed maybe, or accuracy, I don't recall, maybe back attack, I don't recall. You can also get the crystal of stalwart. It's like a 300 million crystal, something like that, maybe 200. Very cheap. It gives you again extra AP, casting speed and damage reduction, I believe, which is again very good. Plus you'll have like an odd number of crystals because of the Steer. So it's like a good complementary to any PvE setup, and it gives high value stats for cheap basically. You also have your Acrods. There are like 3 tiers of Acrods. There are the base Acrods, no one buys those. You also have your glorious, I believe they're called, yeah, the glorious crystal of whatever Acrods. You should buy these. You'll also upgrade them into the void Acrods, which is the 3rd tier. Personally, I like upgrading my own crystals. You can just buy the 3rd tier if you want and sell the old ones. Do whichever you like, just don't buy the base Acrods because they're useless. And yeah, you're going to slot in 2 of those. They're purple, they're beautiful in my opinion. You should always have them. I'm getting kind of sick of talking. You have your ultimate Macalods, which are the blue crystals. They're like 900 million each, or like a billion each. So you're gonna get 4 of those, which will give you like a shit ton of AP and stamina, maximum stamina. They do give EXP, I believe, but very redundant in my opinion, but it's nice to have, I guess. They're best in slot for any type of crystal setup that plans on pushing their AP. You should always have those. Finally, if you want like tankiness, I would just get 1 or 2 frozen crystals of bitterness and slot them in instead of like either the rebellious crystals, maybe even the stalwart crystal of stalwart. Feel free to use whatever. Also you have your 4 the ultimate homes, I believe they're called, the green ones. They're also like the same scenario for the Macarods, except that they give you HP and like DR and evasion, stuff like that, basically for like tankiness. That's it actually. Okay, basically regarding late game, you're going to be upgrading your what are they, your corrupteds, which will give you more AP. You're going to be upgrading your Acrods, which will give you again more AP. The crystals I just mentioned, you're going to be spending like 2.5 billion on each crystal, which is why this is like the late game setup. But again, it's mostly like your mid game, same stats but more of them. And yeah, looks like we're done. Okay, I need like an outro. Okay, and that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two from the video. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Please, if you did, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Feel free to also leave a comment with any feedback you have, or maybe even like make fun of my voice. I don't care. And yeah, I'll be seeing you guys in the next video, which will be discussing how to actually play the game. If you're still here, I'm going to be yapping a little bit about myself and like my setup and like my life. So basically I'm Abdurrahman, from Egypt, if that matters. I used to play BDO a lot back in the day, like 3 years ago, something like that. But then I had to sell my laptop, my gaming laptop, for financial reasons. And ever since, I've been like itching to get back in the game, um, but I couldn't because I had no PC to play on. And even now, I'm like playing on a shitty Dell laptop, which I'll be showing I'll be taking a picture of and like showing you in the edit. Yeah, this is my setup. It looks jank, and it is jank honestly, but it's what I have, and like it can kind of run the game at like 20 FPS, thankfully. So it's very hard to like get in-game footage, which is why I did this on like PowerPoint. Hopefully the format isn't too ugly for YouTube in 2026. Yeah, basically once like this like YouTube thing actually works out, I'll be upgrading my setup and like doing more gaming content basically, and less tutorial content. But until then, all I have is my PowerPoint and my voice, so hopefully that isn't an issue. Hopefully this content is for someone out there, and hopefully you guys enjoy the content I'm providing. Yeah, expect weekly videos, if not more, like once per week, if not more. Also expect some inconsistencies early on, while I'm like figuring out like timings, and by then I'll like have everything sorted and like have an actual workflow. But until then, expect some inconsistencies, and if that does happen, I'm sorry. But yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video again. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, give me feedback. I really need the feedback. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on the format, on the information itself. If I am giving any misinformation, please let me know in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.